The rain came down in sheets that November evening, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of neon light and shadow. Most people hurried past the huddled figure in the doorway of the abandoned bookstore, their umbrellas creating a moving canopy of indifference. But Sarah Mitchell stopped. Something about the way the elderly woman sat there, perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap, made Sarah's chest tighten with a feeling she couldn't name. The woman wasn't begging. She wasn't holding a sign. She was simply existing in that small shelter from the storm, and her eyes held a depth that seemed to reach across the rain-soaked pavement and grip Sarah's heart. Sarah was running late. She had a presentation to prepare for tomorrow, dinner plans with colleagues she couldn't cancel, and a phone that had been buzzing incessantly in her pocket for the last 10 minutes. Her life was a carefully constructed tower of obligations, each one stacked precisely atop the other. But those eyes, those ancient, knowing eyes that seemed to see straight through her designer coat and into the hollow place where her soul used to live before the promotions and the expectations and the endless climb up a ladder she wasn't sure she'd chosen to climb. "Excuse me," Sarah heard herself say, surprised by her own voice. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up slowly, and a smile creased her weathered face like paper folding along familiar lines. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice soft as worn velvet. "I'm just fine." "But you look like you're carrying the weight of the world on those shoulders." Sarah laughed, but it came out choked. When was the last time someone had asked about her? When was the last time anyone had looked past her polished exterior to see the exhaustion, the loneliness, the growing sense that somewhere along the way she'd lost herself in the pursuit of everyone else's definition of success? "Can I get you something? Coffee? Food?" Sarah asked, kneeling down despite the puddle forming around her knees. "You got somewhere to be," the woman observed, not unkindly. "Your phone's been ringing off the hook." "It can wait," Sarah said, and meant it. Something had shifted in that moment, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. The woman introduced herself as Margaret, and over coffee at the diner across the street, she told Sarah a story that would change everything. Margaret had been a nurse for 47 years, working double shifts at Cook County Hospital, raising 3 kids on her own after her husband died young. She'd spent her life giving to others, and she spoke about it not with bitterness, but with a kind of fierce joy that made Sarah's eyes burn with unshed tears. "I'm not homeless, you know," Margaret said, wrapping her gnarled hands around the coffee cup. "I was waiting for the rain to pass so I could catch the bus. These old bones don't move as fast as they used to." She paused, studying Sarah with that penetrating gaze. "But I think maybe I was supposed to wait right there, right then, so you could find what you're looking for." "What am I looking for?" Sarah whispered. "The thing you lost when you stopped being her," Margaret said simply. "The girl who used to volunteer at the animal shelter every Saturday. The one who wanted to teach art to underprivileged kids. The one who believed that making a difference mattered more than making partner." Sarah's breath caught.
"How did you—"
"I didn't know any of that," Margaret smiled. "But I know that look in your eyes. I've seen it in the mirror more times than I can count. Back when I forgot why I became a nurse in the first place." Over the next 3 hours, as the rain finally slowed to a drizzle and the diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, something inside Sarah began to thaw. Margaret talked about her daughter, Maya, who ran a community center in Inglewood, struggling to keep the doors open while corporate donors pulled funding. She talked about the kids who came there after school, hungry for attention and opportunity, about the single mothers who took job training classes in the evenings, about the elderly residents who gathered for meals because it was the only hot food they'd get all week. "We lost our art program last month," Margaret said quietly. Maya had to let the teacher go. "You should see those kids' faces now, like someone turned off a light inside them." Sarah went home that night, but she didn't prepare her presentation. She didn't make her dinner meeting. Instead, she sat in her expensive apartment overlooking Lake Michigan and cried for the first time in years. She cried for the girl she used to be, for the dreams she'd traded for a corner office, for the years she'd spent building a life that looked perfect on the outside, but felt empty within. The next morning, Sarah called in sick for the first time in 6 years. She drove to Englewood, to an address scrawled on a napkin in Margaret's shaky handwriting. The community center was smaller than she'd imagined, wedged between a laundromat and a vacant lot. But when she stepped inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. She felt like she'd come home. Maya was nothing like her mother in appearance, but everything like her in spirit. She was younger than Sarah expected, maybe 35, with tired eyes and an infectious smile that never quite reached them. When Sarah explained why she was there, Maya's professional politeness cracked. "My mother sent you?" she asked, voice thick. "That woman, always believing in miracles." "I used to teach art," Sarah said, "before law school, before everything else, and I'd like to volunteer." "If you'll have me?" Maya laughed, but it was the sound of something breaking open. "Volunteer? We can't pay you anything." "I don't need pay. I need purpose." The first class was chaos. 15 kids between ages 8 and 14, all skeptical of this well-dressed white woman who showed up with fancy art, supplies, and uncertain hands. But Sarah remembered something her own art teacher had told her once. Art isn't about perfection. It's about truth. So she didn't try to impress them or teach them technique. She asked them to paint their dreams. A 10-year-old named Deshaun painted his mother's smile, the one he saw on paydays before the bills came. A 13-year-old girl named Jasmine painted a door opening onto a field of stars. And when Sarah asked her about it, Jasmine said, "That's what college looks like in my head. A way out to somewhere beautiful." Sarah went home that night with paint under her fingernails and a lightness in her chest she'd forgotten could exist. She came back the next week and the week after that. She started using her lunch breaks to solicit donations from her corporate contacts, leveraging connections she'd built for profit to instead fund possibility. Her colleagues thought she was having a breakdown. Her mother worried she was throwing away her career. But Sarah had never been more certain of anything in her life. 3 months later, when the community center secured enough funding to keep its doors open for another year, Maya pulled Sarah aside with tears streaming down her face. "You saved us," she said. "No," Sarah replied, thinking of an elderly woman in a doorway who had seen past her armor to the aching heart beneath. "Someone saved me first." But the real transformation came 6 months after that rainy November evening, when Sarah made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her. She turned down the partnership she'd been working toward for a decade. Instead, she took a position at a nonprofit that provided legal services to underserved communities at a quarter of her previous salary. Her apartment overlooking the lake was traded for a smaller place in a neighborhood where she could hear the L train and smell the corner bakery every morning. Her designer suits were gradually replaced with comfortable clothes that could handle paint stains and playground dust. People asked her if she regretted it, if she missed the money, the prestige, the power, and Sarah would think about Deshaun, who had just won a citywide art competition and scholarships to a prestigious summer program, about Jasmine, who was now taking AP classes and talking about architecture school, about Maya, who had expanded the center's programs and was changing lives every single day, about Margaret, who stopped by every Thursday just to watch the art class and beam with pride at what her chance encounter had sparked. The truth was, Sarah had never been wealthier. She was rich in laughter, in tears that meant something, in the bone-deep satisfaction of lying down at night knowing that her existence had made the world incrementally better. She was wealthy in connections that mattered, in the trust of children who had learned to hope again, in the respect of a community that had welcomed her not for what she could do for her resume, but for what she was willing to do for them. On the anniversary of that rainy November night, Sarah found herself back at that bookstore doorway. She'd brought Margaret and Maya, along with a dozen kids from the center. They were unveiling a mural the kids had painted on the previously blank wall, a vibrant explosion of color and hope that transformed the dreary block into something magical. The mural showed hands reaching toward each other across a stormy sky, finding connection in the darkness, and in the center a single word, her. "Why her?" a reporter asked, covering the event for the neighborhood paper. Sarah looked at Margaret, at Maya, at the young girl named Jasmine who had helped design the mural, at all the women who had taught her that strength came in infinite forms. She thought about the version of herself she used to be, lost and aching in the rain, and the version she had become, found and whole in service. Because her is all of us, Sarah said softly. Every woman who stops to help. Every girl who dares to dream. Every person who chooses kindness when indifference would be easier. We spend so much time trying to find ourselves, but maybe we only become ourselves when we stop searching and start seeing. Seeing each other. Seeing the need. Seeing the possibility in every stranger's eyes. That night, Sarah walked home through familiar streets. Past the community center where lights still burned as Maya worked late. Past the diner where she and Margaret had shared truth over coffee. Past 1,000 small markers of a life rebuilt on purpose instead of obligation. Her phone didn't buzz with urgent demands. Her calendar wasn't choked with meaningless meetings. But her heart was full in a way no promotion could ever fill it. She thought about that rainy evening, about the woman in the doorway who had seen her so clearly, about how close she'd come to walking past, to missing the moment that would save her life, about how many moments like that existed every single day, waiting for someone to be brave enough to stop, to see, to care. In her apartment, Sarah found a letter Margaret had slipped into her bag. The handwriting was shaky but determined. Dear Sarah, you came looking for me that night, but you were really looking for yourself. The beautiful truth is, we always find ourselves in service to others. You didn't save us. We all saved each other. That's the secret they don't tell you. Humanity isn't a weakness to overcome. It's a strength to embrace. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for seeing. Thank you for being her. The woman you were always meant to be. With all my love, Margaret. Sarah folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer where she kept her most precious things. A child's drawing, a thank you note from a mother whose daughter had found hope again, a photo of the mural with its crowd of smiling faces. These were her treasures now, not stock options or performance bonuses. These were the markers of a life well lived. And as she turned off the light and settled into sleep, Sarah smiled, because she had finally learned what Margaret had tried to teach her that rainy night. You are never lost as long as you can still find your way to kindness. And when you do, you don't just save others. You save yourself.